I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers who have kindly accepted our invitation to be here with us in this beautiful city of Ankara to share their valuable knowledge and expertise on a question of crucial importance. According to the established practice of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian people, we shall first listen to the presentations and then the floor will be open for questions and comments from the audience, to which the speakers will respond. We will also have a 10 minutes break after the third presentation. Before starting, I would like to appeal to our speakers to be strict and stay within the 15-minute time limit set by the organizers, so that we allow enough time for discussion. Our first speaker is Dr. Mahdi Abdul Hadi, Chairman of the Palestinian Academic Society for the Study of International Affairs, known as PASIA. Dr. Abdul Hadi is a political scientist, historian, columnist, author, founder, and member of various Palestinian, Arab, and international institutions. He has devoted most of his life to academic research and dialogue with the aim of providing a deep understanding of key Palestinian issues, past and present. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the kind invitation. And I think such a conference, after what you heard this morning with the speeches and with the positions and with the reflections, I hope next year such a group, OIC, Turkey, and the United States in particular, and the United Nations as well, move to have such an exercise in Jerusalem. However, such meetings, such activities, wherever it is conducted, whether here in Malaysia or South Africa or Egypt, usually people will fight to bring academics and professionals as well as university students and teachers to pass the message and to carry the responsibility of understanding the current situation in Jerusalem. My presentation today is going to talk about the contemporary Jerusalem, but I'm not going to cover all the details since I am restricted with the time element, and I will try my best to summarize basically not only what is contemporary Jerusalem today, but what can we do concerning these issues. I have around 30 chapters. I'm not going to cover all of them, which is cover the past and the present, West Bank cantons, the failure of the Israeli agenda, the myth of the Holy Basin, state and land. This is what you call it, the details of all the chronic cases in the question of Jerusalem. More than 30, but I did summarize them with the 30 ones, and I will pick up few of them in order to share together the current discussion. However, the presentation will be available at the end of the day at the reception here for those who are interested, and it's going to be on the website of many different organizations, including the United Nations. What I'm concerned about the past and the present, in spite of the idea of the settlement and colonization, recognition, legitimacy, and ethnic cleansing, and the state of Israel created in 47, 48, it's today the colonization and what I call it, tsunami colonization, and never ending in Palestine today. However, the idea of recognition, it is there on the tube, whether we have Jordanian-Israeli peace treaty or Egyptian peace treaty, or we have Palestinian recognizing the state of Israel in Oslo. But the process of recognizing, accepting, acknowledging the state of Israel in Palestine is there, yet the Israelis are not content with that. They want the whole Palestine, and they want to continue their colonization policies. And this is exactly how it looks today, the West Bank. However, if you notice, there is no Gaza Strip. It's completely out of the map, completely out of the planning and the zoning and the thinking, because they left it as a burden on Egyptian. Maybe the current reconciliation, Palestinian, Fatah and Hamas, will bring back the unity of the land and the people and the leadership, and maybe some of our aspiration. If you look on this particular situation of today, cantons and the West Bank, We have Jenin, Tulkarim, Tubas Canton. Then we have Kalkilia, Nablus, Salfit. Then we have Ramallah and Hebron Canton and Jericho, small city. What is left in the hand of the Palestinians today is only 17%. However, the question is not only to speak about the current situation, that this is the today de facto real politics on the land, or going back to Gramsci in 1935 and say pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. What can we do to overcome these cantons? How can we reach these people? How can keep life functioning in these cantons to break the walls and this isolation and the separation? I do invite people to be visible presence with their flag and their position in these areas. As long as the Palestinians are meeting the others, they can still look for this open window of optimism. Otherwise, we are sinking in the jungle of a prison. We are all today prisoners to the de facto Israeli policies and practices in spite of any political agenda. If you notice on the West Bank, Jerusalem is completely cut off from the West Bank, cut off completely in that sense that no one can reach it without Israeli permission. However, a few weeks back in Amman, there was a conference on the road to Jerusalem, and the idea was, how can we reach Jerusalem? How can we overcome this wall, this separation, this isolation of the city of Jerusalem? It is not enough that people like me comes all the way from Jerusalem to cry and to weep and to shout, this is the situation, it's ugly, it's painful. It is important to think, how can we overcome it? And here I do invite people to consider thinking, planning, and discussing ways and means to overcome this isolation, this closure of the city of Jerusalem. The problem of Israelization and Judaization of the city of Jerusalem is today in imposing Israeli law, Israeli system. Why people like us, accepting the de facto resolution of annexation, unification, and capital of Israel, and trying to live on the daily basis? How can we change the status quo? How can we bring international law? How can we bring back the Palestinian visible political presence in the city of Jerusalem? Do we have plans? Do we have thinking? Do we have strategists? It is not enough, I repeat, just to say this is Israel doing. But what are we doing? We are resisting, we are steadfasting, we are maintaining our identity, culture, and heritage in the city, yet we are falling in the Israeli system. It is imposed on us on a daily basis. The question is, are we going to apply 242 or are going to apply 181 of 1947? Both resolutions are not implemented by the Israelis and not recognized by the Israelis of today. Again, the question, what Jerusalem we are talking about? Are we talking about Jerusalem Corpus Separatum of 1947 with East and West Jerusalem for 10 years to be separate, corpus separatum from Palestine and Israel, and under United Nations resolution and sovereignty and control for 10 years where its inhabitants decide its destiny? Are we talking about that borders where we have property, 90% of East Jerusalem is Palestinian property, Islamic and Christian Waqf? Or we have to jump very quickly to 242 and talk about only East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem, where East Jerusalem is only 6.5 square kilometers. Yet the Israelis denied this, ignored it, and annexed it and expanded it to become 71 square kilometers on the West Bank territory, expanding it. What Jerusalem we are talking about? People like me from an academic background comes here to say to the United Nations, to the international arena, we should talk about 181 of 1947 because we never discussed, negotiate with Jerusalem. And it is both occupied, East and West, and I will never ever deny or forget or give up my property and my rights in West Jerusalem. So let's invite the United Nations to re-invite and to revisit its resolution and its position on the question of Jerusalem, and not just to keep it as de facto dealing with Israel's reality. If you notice, settlement and settlers on the West Bank, more than 121, West Bank colonies, outposts, over 100. My problem in this cantonization, colonization, and sharing by force the land and the people and the life on the total basis, only 9.4 of the West Bank land, including East Jerusalem, are located between the barrier and the Green Line. Upon completion, only 15% of the barrier line or the wall will be left on the West Bank. It is fragmented land. It's divided society. It's divided situation. My question always, okay, this is Israeli what they are doing. What are we doing? How we can overcome this? Not only statement, not only conferences, not only demonstration, but how can we stop Israelis cutting Jerusalem, dividing Jerusalem, killing Jerusalem? Do we have plans? Do we have ideas? Do we have position? Yes, I do. Yes, I have. But share it with me by being visible with me on the land of Jerusalem. Here another serious problem which started in Camp David, believe it or not. Israel came with this idea about the Holy Basin. And the whole idea of Holy Basin is to focus on Silwan as a small village next to Jerusalem, next to the old city. But their idea is to expand this special system for what they call it Old Jerusalem or Holy Basin to the all 1 kilometer of the old city of Jerusalem. By this, they want to establish a special system only for the 1 square kilometer old city of Jerusalem, where they are already in control of my holy places and my property and my water and my sewage and my education and my life. How can we overcome this idea? There is no holy basin. This is Israeli idea in order to create this idea. The problem is some Westerners, especially some Canadian, came with this idea. Dr. Mahdi, why don't we establish a special system for the old city? And I am one of the people with many others and thousands and millions. We will never accept a special system only for the old city of Jerusalem. It is the old city. It's the West Jerusalem. It's East Jerusalem. It's the Corpus Separatum. Because if you cut the old city completely, it will die. And the rest of us surrounding Jerusalem, East or West, will not have any future. You cannot divide us anymore, and you cannot create a new system. And this is exactly what the Israeli wanted to do. Now, I want to focus on this in order not to go for the rest of the presentation. I claim there are 5 major components shaping, influencing, and governing and directing directly, indirectly the question of Jerusalem. However, these 5 components are governed, controlled by the Israelis. And let's look upon them one by one with no fear, with no reluctance, just taking off our jackets and tell the truth. The first component, it's United Nations, international organization. Over 20 international organizations in Jerusalem today are functioning under Israeli law, realpolitik. And my question to them, why don't you deal under international law? Why don't you deal under United Nations flag? The presence of the United Nations flag in Jerusalem is very much needed today. Why don't you play with the Israelis this time of negotiation and different position in order to weaken the imposement of Israeli law and system on you as the United Nations organization in terms of registration, travel, residency, movement of people and movement of goods? You gave in already to the realpolitik and you are functioning as Israeli wants you. And I'm come here to tell you, no, it's time to stop this. And not like what Ban Ki-moon did in his first ever visit to Jerusalem, believe it or not, when we met him, he said, Shalom. I was shocked to hear him telling me Shalom. I was shocked to hear him, I'm happy in Israel. This is occupied city. This is divided, fragmented city. This is part of the United Nations responsibility. Although he did apologize for not being well briefed, it's time to awaken the United Nations visible, continuous presence in Jerusalem. The second component, with all respect, Muslims, Arab organization, our friends and our brothers in 1948, their presence and their continuous support is like putting off fires, small fires here and there, with no real strategy. Just house demolished, let's support them. The family deported, let's support them. A prisoner here, let's support him. But they come with different positions, and none of them, their presence and relationship with us without Israeli consent, without the Israeli approval. However, I'm one of the people who tell them, let's coordinate. Let's work together with a vision, with a position, with some reality, but not just because you have a connection with Hamas people here, we'll do it. We have a connection with Fatah people, you do it here. We have it with professionals, do it here with people. There is no coordination and there is no consensus among all these people who are goodwill people. coming from all over Islamic and Arab countries, as well as 1948. Their visible presence is very much needed, yet there is need of cooperation and coordination and strategic planning. The third component is our sole legitimate representative, the PLO. It has been the embodiment of our national aspirations since 1974 and maybe before when Fatah started in 1965. However, today after Oslo, they are partners with no functions. Our major institution, which represented the national house in Jerusalem by Faisal Husseini, has been closed since 2001. Most of our major institutions are closed. The PLO does not function legitimacy, legally, officially in Jerusalem with us. It is either under the table or under the carpet or the back door. It's time, the PLO, to have their visible, continuous, legitimate, recognized presence in the city with the support of United Nations and other countries. How to do this? I don't have a magic plan, but it is a responsibility. We have to raise it and not to accept the de facto. Since Oslo is dead, since the two-state solution is no more, since we are living a de facto apartheid state with one-state conditions, it's time to have our say in Jerusalem officially as the PLO. The fourth finger covers the religious perspective. And here I have to be very clear about two positions. One of the Vatican in 1993 when they signed an agreement with Israel, and one when they signed in the year 2000 with the PLO. Although they are two parallel agreements, yet the Catholics will not accept Jordanian custodianship on Christian holy places as every other church in Jerusalem. Yet today, or in fact, to tell you the truth, yesterday I came across a wonderful, strong statement by Kairos group in Bethlehem, asking Patriarch Ra'i of the Maronite in Lebanon, if he's coming to Jerusalem, please don't come through normalization with Israel. You are welcome. This is your church. You must be there, and we want to have you. But we were denied our right in being in the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. We are not allowed to be in Jerusalem in the first place. The Kairos statement of yesterday for the Patriarch of Lebanon is very important to realize the contradictions we are living. We want people to come, yet we don't want them to be through Israeli channels or windows or legitimization. Yet we want them to overcome these obstacles and to be with us. We live this kind of contradiction because we are not only weak, not only divided, not only alone, because we were denied as well to be in our own holy places. The Jordanian custodianship for the holy sites or Al-Aqsa Mosque, of course it goes back to 1924. Of course it was Musa Kazim Husseini and the Grand Mufti of Palestine going to Aqaba, meeting Hussein ibn Ali and asking him to be responsible. Of course in the 50s, King Abdullah established, believe it or not, the first custodium for the holy places, Raghib al-Nashashibi, as mayor of Jerusalem. The question today, do we have the courage and the wisdom and the will to establish commissioner for Jerusalem? Let's start with the first finger. Can we have at the UN in New York a commissioner for Jerusalem? We can deal directly under international law and United Nations umbrella and flag. Can we have in the Arab League, where we failed with Amr Musa through Arafat Foundation 2 years back, to establish a Arab commissioner for Jerusalem in the Arab League? We have difficulties with Morocco, we have difficulties with Jordan, we have difficulties with the Saudis. Everybody claims he has something to do with Jerusalem. So we are telling them, unite your forces, come together to the Arab House, to the Arab League, and let's have a seat. Let's have a Saudi prince or Yemeni prince or Emirates prince, anybody, any prince from the world, to be our address at the Arab League. Yet divided people cannot, or as Jamal Abdel Nasser used to say, shaking hands cannot build. So we failed at the United Nations to have a commissioner. We failed in the Arab League to have a commissioner. And we want Palestinian officials to have their own commissioner for Jerusalem instead of having too many ranks and too many labels and too many names and too many addresses. One Palestinian commissioner for Jerusalem to coordinate our efforts and our national movement. Finally, the last finger is us, the Palestinian society, university and 200 civil societies and commercial center and people, believe it or not, crushed completely by the Israeli security forces, by the security culture of fear, of dividing people, not only as a wall dividing us. Here, if you see, What is left in our land? Only 22% land public use coming for the green areas. What is left in our hand? Only 13% of the land, and it already has been mostly built. And they are going to annex between 30% of the unplanned land as well as the settlement land. So more than 52% of the land will be completely controlled by the Israelis. So what is land left for us in Jerusalem? More settlement and no planning. The question here in planning and zoning, what we are facing, only Israeli municipality and government planning and zoning of Jerusalem. We don't have our own Palestinian planning and zoning, nor an Arab planning and zoning, and the small window left for us to plan is what is already offered for us, the 13% land territory, and through Israeli system. And here I call on the Palestinian officials as well as the Arabs to think out loud. Let's think of what Jerusalem we want, how we want to plan Jerusalem. It is our capital, it's our national address, it's our holy places. Let's start thinking and planning for Jerusalem and not to be prisoner for the Israeli planning and the zoning and depending only on what is left for us, 9,000 dunum in Jerusalem. Here another serious problem, if we are talking about two-state solution or Palestine, you see the area, E area is cutting Jerusalem to two pieces completely and dividing it. And this is ongoing, believe it or not. My question here, how can we reach these people and not to continue their planning? What kind of policies and practices? It needs a political position, a political will to change Israeli policies and practices in dividing, fragmenting our society. Here, what is important in this question about resident and housing, where I pointed clearly and show it to you, Palestinian Christians in Jerusalem are only 14,600 people. And I was told by many priests, if you omit from it 6,000 priests, so what is left? 9,000 Christians? And here I tell the people, this is the capital of the Christian faith. Where are the Christians of the people, with the world? Where are you? Why don't you come to Jerusalem? Why don't you open your university, your civil society, your offices, and the churches? Believe it or not, on Sundays, most of the churches are empty. Hardly you can people, only for condolences or marriages and occasionally. The question is, where is the Christian people? Why you leave the Palestinian Christian in the city isolated and dying on daily basis? If you notice this young chap on the 6th of February 2013, he returned to his house and found his house demolished. What future he face? How can he function? What about his family? This is the reality of today. People goes back home to find their houses demolished. How can we make Israel apply for United Nations resolution? Thousands of resolutions, nothing applied. Israel is enjoying muscles and power and control and decide what to demolish or what not to demolish. The question of the prisoner in Jerusalem is unique because Israel take a special policy in isolating them from any other system under the sun. They treat them either as Israeli citizens and are not allowed to be exchanged for prisoner exchange or condition of their life. And what is really happening in new, not really intifada, but new thinking among these people to awaken the world. They go for hunger strike. Hunger strike to die. They want to die for simple things, for their dignity. Not for freedom, independence, and flag and statehood. Just for their dignity. And we have over 5,000 Palestinians in the prison. How can we change this? Settlers and settlement. This is continuous policy from day one of the Zionist thinking and planning, from political Zionism now becoming religious Zionism. If you drive your car from Ramallah to Nablus, all the way, over the hills you have synagogues, all the streets you have settlers. Even the signs for the land and the streets and the neighborhood are in Hebrew and nothing about Palestinian village. They are in fact in full control of the occupied territories or what is left of the West Bank. Where I give some hope and pessimism on this final point, if you question young people in Palestine today, who are you? And I claim always there are many layers in my identity. I'm a Muslim, I'm an Arab, I'm a Palestinian, I'm a Jerusalemite, I'm Abdul Hadi, and all these layers function together and share it together. Yet, the youth of today, there is one flag. We are Palestinians, and will continue to be Palestinians. And we need you to recognize this youth movement today of boycotting Israelis on all fronts. Thank you.
I would like to thank Dr. Abdul Hadi for his presentation. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our deep appreciation for your presence here and for this very informative presentation. Now our next speaker is His Excellency Archbishop Antonio Franco, former apostolic delegate for Jerusalem and Palestine. Archbishop Franco served as apostolic nuncio to Ukraine from 1992 to 1999 and to the Philippines between 1999 and 2006. In 2006, he was appointed apostolic nuncio to Israel and Cyprus, as well as apostolic delegate to Jerusalem and Palestine, where he served until 2012. We are honored to welcome you as a panelist in this important meeting. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, allow me at the outset to express to the Chairman of the United Nations Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, His Excellency Abu Salam Diallo, the appreciation and the gratitude of the Secretariat of State of the Holy See for the kind invitation to attend this meeting. The topic under consideration, the question of Jerusalem, as it is well known, has always been at the center of the concern of the Holy See and one of its most important priorities in its international action. The reason is obvious. Jerusalem is the holy city of the three monotheistic religions, and so has a unique value not only for the region but also for the entire world. And Jerusalem is the holy city of the three monotheistic religions, mainly because it enshrines their most important holy places. Let me recall this basic reality of Jerusalem with the words of Pope John Paul II, who wrote in his apostolic letter, Redemptionis Anno, of April 20th, 1984, and I quote, "Jews ardently love Jerusalem, and in every age venerate her memory, abundant as she is in many remains and monuments from the time of David, who chose her as the capital, and of Solomon, who built the temple there. Therefore they turn their minds to her daily, one may say, and point to her as the sign of their nation. Christians honor her with a religious and intent concern, because there the words of Christ so often resounded. There the great events of the redemption were accomplished, the passion, death, and the resurrection of the Lord. In the city of Jerusalem, the first Christian community sprang up and remained throughout the centuries, a continual ecclesial presence despite the difficulties. Muslims also call Jerusalem holy, with a profound attachment that goes back to the origins of Islam and springs from the fact that they have there many special places of pilgrimage, and for more than 1,000 years have dwelt there almost without interruption and occupation. The second basic reality of Jerusalem is the fact that the two peoples claim it as their homeland and wish to have it as capital of their own national state. The second aspect of the question of Jerusalem is considered more of a political nature, although it has many and delicate moral aspects. The Holy See, while asserting no competence in strictly political matters, like territorial disputes between nations, affirms its right and duty to remind the parties of the obligation to resolve controversies peacefully in accordance with the principle of justice and equity within the international legal framework. For this reason, speaking of Jerusalem, the Holy See has always affirmed, like it does in the preamble of the basic agreement with the Palestine Liberation Organization signed on 15 of February 2000, that, and I quote, an equitable solution based on international resolutions is fundamental for a just and lasting peace in the Middle East, and that unilateral decisions and actions altering the specific character and statutes of Jerusalem are morally and legally unacceptable. With regard to the religious dimension of Jerusalem, however, the Holy See has always had a specific concern and a direct interest because, as I have already said, it considers Jerusalem unique and sacred inasmuch as Jewish, Christian, and Muslim believers live there, and the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim believers throughout the world maintain there the most precious shrines, making Jerusalem a treasure for all humanity. For this reason, the popes have always called for the protection of the identity of Jerusalem and have consistently drawn attention to the need for international commitment to protect its unique and sacred character. In this regard, the position of the Holy See, as elaborated in July 29th of the year 2000, has not changed, and I am pleased to highlight it also in this very important meeting. First, the Holy See wants to preserve the uniqueness of the most sacred parts of the city, the holy places, so that in the future neither of the parties can claim them exclusively for themselves, because they are part of the patrimony which belongs to the whole world. Second, for the Holy See, the holy places are not safeguarded. It's not only the heritage of the past, but also the men and women who live there today and those who will live there in the future. Third, to safeguard the religious and human dimensions of Jerusalem from every political contingency, the Holy See, in fidelity to the intent of the first and the fundamental resolutions of the United Nations on this matter, thinks that only a special statute, internationally guaranteed, can ensure the historical, material, and religious character of the holy places, as well as free access to them for residents and pilgrims alike, whether local or from other parts of the world. Fourth, the purpose of these guarantees would be to secure A. Freedom of religion and conscience for all. B. The juridical equality of the three monotheistic religions and their institutions and followers. C. The respect for the identity and the sacred character of the city and its universally significant religious and cultural heritage. D. The freedom of access to the shrines and of worship in them. E. The regime of status quo in those holy places where it applies. Fifth, the international guarantor of this special statute could be the United Nations, which since 1947 has been engaged in the effort to secure the preservation of the unique identity of the city of Jerusalem. It could be also the sponsors of the peace process. Other formulae could be found. But in any case, even if the direct initiative were of another institution or multilateral group, it will be necessary that the final result be, in one way or another, sanctioned by the United Nations. It is obvious that, once established, the provisions of the special statute regarding the holy places will need to be applied by analogy also to the other holy places in the rest of the Holy Land, Israeli and the Palestinian territories. Mr. Chairman, Jerusalem is the city of peace, and yet there is no peace there. And I think there will be no lasting peace in Jerusalem until all the parties concerned learn to acknowledge and respect its unique identity and mission. People of the three religions and of the two nationalities have to be able to feel at home in the holy city of Jerusalem. In 15 days, Pope Francis will be visiting Jerusalem. He will bring a message of hope and will support and encourage the efforts being made in order to bring about the peace and the reconciliation. Let us hope that his visit and the renewed efforts of the international community may help revitalize the peace process through direct negotiations between Israelis and the Palestinians to hasten the dawn of a new era of peace in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land, and throughout the Middle East. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Archbishop Franco for his important and timely contribution as Pope Francis prepares for an historical visit to the Holy Land. Archbishop Franco, we greatly benefited from your insights, and we are thankful that you spent these moments with us. Now I would like to invite the next speaker, His Eminence Sheikh Muhammad Ahmed Hussein, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Sheikh Muhammad Ahmed Hussein has been the 7th and current Grand Mufti of Jerusalem since 2006, appointed by the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Prior to becoming Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Sheikh Hussein was the manager and Imam of Al-Aqsa Mosque. تفضل فضيلة الشيخ. أخذت لك نص ساعة بالشيخ. أعطيتني 15 minutes. نص ساعة. بس كانت كويس.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا سيادة الرئيس. وفي البداية أشكر الجهات القائمة على تنظيم هذا الاجتماع، وقد أعددت ورقة حول إجراءات سلطات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي لتهويد المدينة المقدسة.
About the measures taken by the State of Israel and the Judaization of Jerusalem. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerusalem in particular, as well as the question of Palestine, is an Islamic Arabic issue which concerns the Arab Islamic world and the whole world. It's at the heart of every Arab, every Muslim, and every Christian, because Palestine, which contains Jerusalem, holds an overriding place. It's blessed by God, and the religious place of Jerusalem is well known to everybody. The city of Jerusalem is distinguished, and God has blessed it. It's a holy city which contains the second most important mosque in the world and is an important place of pilgrimage. And because of this distinction, the city of Jerusalem is most important. This city, which is subject to Israeli attacks, Israel is trying to Judaize it in many ways. Since the first days of the 1967 war and the occupation of the whole Palestinian territory, including the city of Jerusalem, the Israeli authorities have been destroying, demolishing many aspects of this city, particularly the Moroccan Quarter, which was completely demolished, as were all the roads leading to the Al-Aqsa mosques. as was the Moroccan Gate. This demolition, this sabotage, was carried out in 1967, and a large part of the Israeli campaign, particularly Al-Aqsa Mosque, which was a blessed mosque, and it has undergone attacks by those who want to control it. On the one hand, you have Israeli fanatics who are supported by the Israeli authorities. It goes without saying that all the settlers and all the other fanatics follow this movement. At the same time, there are Muslims side by side with the Christians. They're all Palestinians who are trying to preserve these holy sites, and they are afraid that the Israelis will carry out all their threats concerning the holy places and Jerusalem in particular. Israeli measures in Jerusalem and in the Al-Aqsa Mosque fit into the policy of fait accompli, new facts on the ground, intended to Judaize the holy city and get rid of its people through occupation and military force. And the Israelis are trying to marginalize the Palestinians and stamp out their Islamic and Arab identity. So we can sum up these measures in the following points. They are trying to surround the Al-Aqsa Mosque by building colonies, building settlements. Of course, this is a serious attempt to rid the old city of Jerusalem of its Palestinian population and get them replaced by Israeli settlers. The excavation work is also another measure through which the Israeli authorities are digging tunnels under the old city and under the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the regions around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This work contains about 60 excavation works in very important areas close to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and close to the entry to the mosque. This work, in some places, has gone down 5 meters. The tunnels are more than 3,000 meters going in different directions, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the surrounding areas. The attempts to stop peaceful marches, the Israeli authorities keep trying to invest the Al-Aqsa Mosque very early in the morning, between 6 and 11 in the morning. These are daily practices carried out by the settlers and the Israeli police and all the fanatics who are trying to Judaize the city of Jerusalem while ignoring the Muslim and Arab factors. An example of this is what was done by an Israeli member of parliament, Moshe Viglen. He came to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and invited all the Jewish settlers to invest the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And on top of this, the Israeli ministry did the same thing. So investing the Al-Aqsa Mosque is an action which has been taking place over the last 4 months. It's happened 35 times. There were confrontations with the Muslims who were praying inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. These settlers, these fanatics, tried to annul the religious status of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which belongs to Jordan, who is at present the trustee for the holy places, and they wanted to replace them by an Israeli trustee. Of course, the Israelis are responsible for the management of affairs there, and over and above these activities, they attack the guardian of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they also attack citizens, the Muslims, who come to pray inside the mosque. There are other practices such as arrests, expulsions, far from the Al-Aqsa Mosque. These might last several months, even a year, under the pretext that the guardian or the citizens, these who are praying, are perturbing the traffic around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And similarly, the question of the demolition of houses is another clear aspect of how the Palestinians are being prevented from preserving their land and managing the buildings in the area. They do not give them building permits, but they demolish all the buildings that are there. So the Palestinians don't get building permits, which reduces the number of Palestinians in that area. Another aspect, which is very revealing of the Israeli plan of Judaizing the city, that is the confiscation of the identity as citizens of the Palestinians. The Israelis made the citizens simple residents for no obvious reason. Their identity papers are withdrawn for them. They confiscated more than 160,000 documents of inhabitants of Jerusalem who no longer reside in the city. The Palestinians are not sheltered from these Israeli attacks, which also affect the tombs of Muslims. For example, the tomb of Mileh, an Islamic, very ancient Islamic tomb. When Islam entered the holy city, the Israeli authorities started to affect the tomb, and there's been a lot of destruction around this tomb to build there a museum known as the Museum of Tolerance. And I don't know how this term tolerance can be used, because it does not reflect the relics of the dead, and tombs are being attacked so that in their place a museum of tolerance can be built. What tolerance are they talking about? This tolerance doesn't exist in the dictionary of religious conversions. There are traditions, but there is no place for this tolerance. But still, the Israelis use it in their campaign of Judaization of the city. Of course, Al-Aqsa in particular and Jerusalem in general are victims of this fierce attack, we call upon all the Islamic Arab countries and all the member countries of the United Nations to do their duty to protect this city and this heritage, this civilization based essentially on religion and history, but also on the facts. The presence of the Palestinian people, the Arab people, with all religions, doesn't matter which, Muslims and Christians, who've been living there for rather more than 2,000 years. And the holy city was founded about 5,000 years ago by our ancestors, and this is why we appeal to this international meeting to make recommendations, to consider the recommendations so that we can implement the international resolutions and implement the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people and protect the holy city with its whole civilization and heritage at a time when it is necessary to do so. And we invite you all to come to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And those who come to visit prisoners don't hold out their hand to the executioner. We wish you every success, and we hope that you are going to take advantage of these resolutions to help the Palestinians who want to identify with their territory and to protect them and to help them in their actions to preserve their heritage. Thank you very much.
Shukran, Fadilat al-Sheikh. I would like to thank the Grand Mufti for his important contribution. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our appreciation for your participation at this meeting and for clearly presenting the challenges faced by the Palestinian people, in particular in Jerusalem. This first session. For our next speaker, we have the honor to welcome Dr. Wasfi Kilani, Director of the Hashemiyat Fund for the Restoration of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Dr. Kilani is a specialist of the question of Jerusalem and a member of the Jordanian delegation to the World Heritage Committee of UNESCO. His research interests also concern the relationship between identity, religion, and borders. Doctor, thank you for being with us. You have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, peace be upon you.
English for two reasons. First of all, because the slides are in Arabic and you can read them. And much of what I want to say has been said by Akhuna Ustadna Sheikh Mufti Muhammad Hussein. My presentation will follow the two presentations of Dr. Mahdi Abdel Hadi and the Mufti, talking about the current legal situation, but I will delve and try to go down to the ground to give specific examples of how are the Israeli violations and aggressions being practiced on the ground, changing the facts on the ground and the status quo on daily basis. And in this presentation, I will focus on the holy sites, basically on Al-Aqsa Mosque and the last 2 years violations against the Waqf, against the shrine itself, against Al-Haram al-Sharif and its surroundings. In short, and you have already heard the situation in Jerusalem, the legal situation in Jerusalem, it's occupied city with all resolutions and decisions documented, well known, and no need to repeat the conventions of Hague, the UNESCO, or Geneva, which all say very clearly the rules and procedures that Israel should abide with, and Israel does not abide any of these decisions as we heard. But the situation of the holy sites and its surroundings, meaning Jerusalem. Also, in short, Jerusalem is suffering Judaization process, evacuation and exile of Jerusalemites from the city, division, cantonization, as we understood from Dr. Mahdi, plus division of specific neighborhoods, and the last aggression is the attempt to divide the mosque itself. This is part of what we can tell about the situation in Jerusalem now. There are about 900,000 people living in Jerusalem, with about 300,000 Arab Jerusalemites, but the snake wall is exiling or has exiled about 100,000 in the years between 2008 2010, when the wall gates were closed, and about 100,000 of the Jerusalemites are now have to choose between living inside the city or living at their homes outside the city. Addition, if we talk about house demolitions, I just received a report today that in 2014 there are now about 234 house demolitions in the last 5 months, and we can add this number to the 14,000 demolitions since 1967. Just about 50,000 settlement units have been built since the beginning of the peace talks. Either they started before or they were launched and decided after the beginning of the peace talks in the last 12 months. And we talk about 119 settlement units inside the old city of Jerusalem around Al-Aqsa Mosque, living, and this is apart from the Jewish quarter. In these confiscated houses, about 2,000 Jews, every Jew in these settlement units inside the old city, every 5 Jews, they have one army guard to protect them. This is the situation on which I am going to focus. What's happening or what has been happening at Al-Aqsa Mosque, the most sensitive place during the last 2 years. Every other day, every 2 weeks, we have this situation. Al-Aqsa is suddenly full of from 500 to 1,000 soldiers. They capture all corners of Al-Aqsa Mosque. They ban Muslims from access to Al-Aqsa or to the Dome of the Rock, and clashes start. And just in one of the cases, if you look at these pepper bombs were thrown inside the Al-Aqsa Jami', and this is a photo of one of the victims that every time the soldiers broke into the mosque, we see. Then Al-Aqsa Mosque is the most targeted place in Jerusalem for today. The most targeted, and at the same time, in contrary to the Israeli awareness that it's the holiest place in Palestine for 1.7 billion Muslims. Why Al-Aqsa is so important and so sensitive, not only because it's one of the 3 holiest sites, but also because all of what we see here, or what is called the Holy Basin, is connected to Al-Aqsa Mosque. The majority of these properties, of the buildings, the houses, even the churches, are Waqf properties. We have 101 mosque, we have 42 Waqf schools, we have about 100 churches. Inside each church there are many properties, and the majority of them are Waqf properties, meaning they are attached to Al-Aqsa Mosque, as stated by the Omari Pact since about 14 centuries. And we have about 1,100 Islamic real waqf in addition to 50 family waqf. And when we say 50 family waqf, we are talking about 3,000 properties. The majority of these properties are today targeted and facing the threat of confiscation by the extremists or by the Israeli official authorities. And this is an image which shows how the surroundings of Al-Aqsa Mosque are targeted by the occupation authorities. The green color is called the greening. These are categorized by the Israeli municipality as parks, public parks, and sometimes Al-Haram al-Sharif itself is stated at the municipality as a public park, not as a holy site. And the yellow areas are places which have been already Judaized, completely confiscated, and changed it into a different face and different facts on the ground. No Palestinian existence, no Palestinian even entry into these places. This is a photo of what do we mean by Al-Aqsa Mosque, Al-Haram al-Sharif, and we have sent to the United Nations several times through official channels the definition of Al-Haram al-Sharif, meaning it is the 144 dunams and 110 square meters over the ground. But there is about 60 dunams below the ground, among them the Marwani Mosque, the Buraq Mosque, the Al-Aqsa Al-Tahtani, the Lower Aqsa Mosque, and about 42 wells and cisterns. All of them are defined as an integrative part of Al-Aqsa Mosque. And here is the real battle over Al-Aqsa Mosque. Look, what is the Israeli definition of Al-Aqsa Mosque? Only the blue colors should be owned or belong to the Muslims, which means the two shrines. And in their definitions, these two shrines are the only two structures that have been built by Muslims, which is not true. It is a falsified narrative, and for them, all these red colors are remains of the temple, which is a very risky, challenging, and false Jewish narrative. Some of the threats when we talk about tunnels and excavations. Today we have about 20 tunnels around Al-Aqsa Mosque. These 20 tunnels, we are not sure if they go below the mosque, but we are pretty sure that they penetrated the wall of the mosque. In 1970, 1972, 1982, 1993, there were events when there were serious attempts and the excavators went underground of Al-Haram al-Sharif, but they were blocked by the Jordanian Awqaf and the Al-Aqsa guards every time they attempted. But we never know, because nobody today has surveillance or can know where do these tunnels end up. Okay. This is another example of what we heard from Sheikh Muhammad Hussein, the Mughrabi or the Magharbe neighborhood before 1967 and after 1967 until 2004. This neighborhood, which you see here in black and white colors, used to have about 4 schools, about 3 mosques, and very prestigious Mughrabi families used to live here since the time of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. The Mughrabi neighborhood was completely destructed in 1967, 4 days after the end of the war. But the remains of the Magharbe Gate pathway, what you see on the left side, started to be demolished in 2004. Okay, this is one of the cases about the approach, the method of confiscation. If we go back to pre-1967 and the legal status, for example, of the Buraq Wall, or what's called the Western Wall, it used to be 3 meters wide by 22 meters long. Now we have 90 meters by 100 meters long. It has been expanded day after day, and they did not stop. They did not stop. In 2004, they decided to remove the remains of the Magharbe Gate pathway, and they gained an expansion of about 20 meters wide and another 90 meters long on the account of the what has remained of the Magharbe quarter. And legally speaking, there was a legal case in during the 3 years of 1929 until 1933 by the British Commission, and the case ended up that the Western Wall area is an ownership and attachment, an inseparate part of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Jews have the right to visit, and that was the status quo. And here the legal issue makes sense, apart from that everything is now under occupation. This is another example of under the eyes of UNESCO, when there was a mission expected to come 2 years ago to Jerusalem. In 4 days, on the 8th of August 2012, we took the photo of a remaining historic room of the Magharbe Gate pathway. A few days after, we went there, and suddenly the room has disappeared, completely destructed. During these days, there was a tent set above the room, and in 4 days, the room has been completely removed. And this is the vision for the future of the Magharbe quarter, or what they say, the Western Wall area, completely Judaized face and structure. Back to inside Al-Aqsa Mosque and the threat of dividing Al-Aqsa Mosque, what we see here, for example, is Moshe Feiglin, the deputy of the Knesset, of the Israeli Knesset. Every other day, he encourages tens of Israeli extremists to break into Al-Aqsa, and he tries to do prayers, which means not only to visit, but also to change the status of the holy sites. And on the left, there is another rabbi called Yuda Glick, who on daily basis brings groups of children and visitors, and he enters with a map on which there is only an image of the temple. And he describes the site as if there was no mosque, no Dome of the Rock, and the whole esplanade is the esplanade of the temple, which is, again, a very extreme aggression against our heritage. This is one of the extremist campaigns for school children today to come to the mosque, and it tells, come, joy, hope, the Temple Mount. And they bring them models of the structure of the Temple Mount, the third Temple Mount, which means they try to normalize the Israeli generation that this structure of the mosque will be destructed one day, and we will build the third temple. And every time there are hundreds of of soldiers. What we see here, the soldiers, on the 1st January of 2012, there was an Israeli government decision allowing soldiers to tour Al-Aqsa Mosque. And since that time, 3 years ago, every day there is a number of 60 to 150 soldiers. They enter Al-Aqsa Mosque with their weapons as tourists, but in a very provocative and challenging way, and they tour and describe Al-Aqsa as if there is no Aqsa, there is no mosque.
Please
The
try
gates
to
of
round up.
Yes, the gates of Al-Aqsa here are shown as victims of the incursions by the soldiers. This is a new method. Just last month, they lock the doors of Al-Aqsa with the Muslims inside in order to capture them and allow Jews make their tour freely. And when they withdraw or they take off these locks, look to this more than 500 years old gate, what happens to such heritage? Okay, this is an earth which our Awqaf has been banned to remove from Al-Aqsa since 1996, among other 15 Awqaf projects are obstructed by the Israeli authorities in order to impose a new status quo. And this has become also a daily or at least weekly view of Al-Aqsa Mosque, with hundreds of soldiers entering and touring in order to protect few extremists' incursions inside the mosque. This platform is very important. It has been set at the wall of Al-Aqsa Mosque last year. Do you know for what reason? In order to convince the American Jews, the liberal Jews, that to recruit them for the idea of the temple. This is a new Western Wall area for the liberal Jews where they can do their prayers in mixed gender prayer, or in the Reform and Conservatives in their manners. And these are examples of tens of museums and schools where these extremists train the Israeli and Jewish people how to conduct their prayers when the third temple will be built. And this is the vision. 5 years ago, this used to be like a secret picture, very scary, but today it's on the website of the Israeli Foreign Ministry. It has become an official narrative. The matter is really serious and it's not easy. And in the lower level of this slide, you see the Israeli Foreign Ministry deputy showing the Dome of the Rock being destructed back to 3,000 years ago when there was no mosque. And all this is a narrative. There is no evidence of all these narratives. And follow are only a few examples of the destruction of the Islamic and Arabic heritage in the area surrounding Al-Aqsa Mosque. If you have heard about the Nabi Dawood Mosque at the southern wall of outside the old city of Jerusalem, the only problem with these ceramics that they show very Islamic style. These ceramics are Ottoman ceramics that have been put here 400 years ago. They just came to destruct them, to remove them, because inside they wanted to convert the mosque into a synagogue, and they did. And here is the mosque converted into a Jewish synagogue, and inside is what's called the Temple of David. And look at the right side, where even the iron of the windows are removed, and they brought the Jewish star in order to show the mosque that it has been completely not only confiscated but changed into a different feature. These are the graves being destructed in their way to also being confiscated and possibly, as it happened in other places, converted into a Jewish graveyard. These are examples of the crashes because of the tunneling in the Muslim quarter of the old city of Jerusalem. These are examples of hundreds of places of Judaization of the names of places, streets, and different corners in the old city. These are plans and a real synagogue in contrary to the UNESCO and all international conventions being built as a new structure in the middle of the old city, just about 30 meters from the western wall of Al-Aqsa Mosque. And recently, the churches also have been targeted by attacks and slogans, death for Arabs and the Christians. And this is the recent method of confiscating the land by implanting Jewish graves. All what you see here, there are about 3,000 Jewish graves that have been implanted without death bodies inside as a new method to confiscate the land. These were only examples of other tens of Judaization actions and aggressions, and I do not want to delve and talk about what should be the response and which way can the international community defend the heritage of Jerusalem. There is a case, I think it is, there is no example in different parts of the world of what is Jerusalem really suffering. And thank you very much.
I would like to thank Dr. Kilani for his presentation on behalf of the organizers, and I would like to express our appreciation for your participation at this meeting and for sharing your valuable knowledge on the question of Jerusalem. Now I would like to welcome our next and last speaker for plenary, His Excellency Mr. Sakir Özkan Turlar. Ambassador Turlar is a Turkish diplomat currently acting as Director General for South Asia at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ankara. He has a distinguished diplomatic career and held numerous positions overseas, including Jerusalem as Consul General and Ramallah as Ambassador to the State of Palestine. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, my longtime friends and colleagues from Jerusalem and Palestine. It's a privilege and honor for me to be invited to this international meeting on Jerusalem as former and first ambassador of Turkey to the State of Palestine. I would like to congratulate the organizers of this event. I also would like to welcome all the guests who spare their time to travel to Ankara from New York, Ramallah, Jerusalem, and attend this very timely meeting. Dear friends, I served as Consul General of Turkey in Jerusalem between April 2010 and December 2013, a period of almost 4 years. After the belated but brave decision of the international community taken in New York immediately after the last Israeli aggression on Gaza in November 2012, I submitted my letter of credentials as ambassador to His Excellency Mahmoud Abbas, President of the State of Palestine. During these 4 years, which I served and lived in East Jerusalem, I had the opportunity to be the first-hand witness of almost all the aspects of the illegal occupation. The occupation was in its 43rd year when I first assumed my post in Jerusalem. Despite tens of resolutions adopted by the international community, occupation still continues with all its dark stains on the daily lives of the Palestinians, Muslim or Christian, living in the town. Checkpoints, permanent or flying. House demolitions. Prevention of Palestinian politicians to exercise their duties. Seizure of properties of the Jerusalemites by court decisions based on fake documents. Detention and arrest of elected representatives of Palestinian parliament from Jerusalem. Price tag attacks on the walls of holy places, including the churches and the mosques, by the extremists. Razing down the cemeteries and defacing the tombstones. Limiting the very human needs of Jerusalemites, including the number of ambulances. Not allowing any new classrooms for the Palestinian children. Imposing Israeli school curriculum to the Palestinian schools are only few of these daily harassment displayed by the occupation in front of the eyes of the international community and its diplomatic representatives, who report almost everything back to their capitals. Due to the time constraints, I do not want to mention in details about the wall illegally erected and dividing this holy city, separation of the families who were living there for thousands of years, continued closure of the Orient House, prevention of the education activities of Al-Quds University. I do not want to mention the 24-hour CCTV surveillance of the Muslim and Christian quarters of the old city. I do not want to mention the harassment the Christian Jerusalemites subjected by the Israeli police during their Easter processions. These were the snapshots of my recent memory I brought back with me. Besides these, I heard tens of stories from Palestinian Jerusalemite families whose relatives living abroad were returned back either from Ben Gurion Airport or the Israeli-controlled border crossings between West Bank and Jordan, who wish to visit their beloved ones they left behind when they intend to visit Jerusalem for a few days. Their passports, issued by the governments who have excellent relations with Israel, do not provide any privileges to them because they are the children born to Jerusalemite Palestinian parents. The renewal procedure of the residence permits or ID cards is another impediment for the Jerusalemites when they go to the relevant office in Wadi al-Jos. According to Article 9 of the 1994 agreement, the special role of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan is recognized on the holy places in Jerusalem, including Al-Aqsa. We are not aware of the fact that to what extent Israel allows Jordan to display its special role on these holy places. Almost daily, tens of settlers, escorted by the police, break into Haram al-Sharif, exercise rituals, sing, dance, and leave. If the Muslims praying inside do not want to allow them in, they face disproportionate force by the Israeli police using rubber bullets or tear gas, in contravention with the international law, even if the occupying authority claims a right to self-defense. Common understanding among the Jerusalemites and the international community is that, like all the other international documents which Israel signed and became party to, 94 agreement is also honored by Israel as long as it serves to its national interests, and certain articles can be ignored when it is not compatible with the occupation. This should not be the way of treatment for a government if it really is in favor of peace and the sovereign state of Palestine living side by side with Israel. However, the question is whether the occupier sincerely wants a two-state solution or not. I really doubt. Let's be frank. As long as the leading coalition partners in the Israeli government individually deny the possibility of a two-state solution, the chance to have another state between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River is rather slim. Immediately after the Palestinian elections of January 2006, our friends in the West created few preconditions, namely the quartet principles. One of them is recognition of Israel, not the recognition of right to exist of Israel. Most of my colleagues among the diplomatic corps of Jerusalem and Ramallah, whom I discussed the issue, confessed me privately that according to international law, it is absurd to ask a political party to recognize a state. So, how can you put in front of a Palestinian political party to recognize the state of Israel as a precondition to build a working relationship? Is there an example of it around the world that a political party recognizes a state? If that is the case, the quartet conditions should also apply to all parties on both sides. Dear friends, as you know, Turkey was the leading country in full support to the Palestinian right to ask for upgrading their status in the United Nations. Before the UN General Assembly adopted the 2012 resolution for more than a year in Jerusalem, some of my colleagues asked me why Turkey is pushing for that, as the geography and climate would not be different on the ground the day after the status of Palestine in UN is upgraded. My answer was as simple as this. Post-1945 world order has witnessed solutions to the conflicts if they were between two states. In this case, we have experienced almost all the mediation efforts between the two sides since 1967, even before that. All have failed. The occupation increased its presence on the ground. In 1980, the number of illegal settlers in Palestine were half of those we have today. I am sure that tomorrow morning Mr. Jadisak will inform the participants about them in details. After the UN General Assembly resolution of 29 November 2012, we see that the efforts of the international community, including the exemplary service of Secretary Kerry for the past 9 months, were much more effective, though it remains in hibernation at the moment. The EU regulation with regard to the settlements was also a part of this game changed after November 2012. State of Palestine flag is now flying in front of the UNESCO headquarters in Paris as a symbol of pride for all peace-loving nations. Most of the members of the international community, I believe, welcomed the recent courageous decision of President Abbas in adhering to 15 international conventions. Today, when we convened here, I was informed that Palestine became party to one of them, namely the UN Anti-Corruption Convention. Excellencies, dear friends, 3 weeks ago, on 23rd of April, all of us celebrated the 94th anniversary of the inauguration of the Turkish Grand National Assembly. Under heavy foreign occupation of the Turkish motherland, our forefathers, leaving behind the differences among them, have united their forces and convened in Ankara, a small town then in the heartland of Turkey, and resisted the occupation. 3 years later, we gained our independence and proclaimed the Republic. I believe that 23rd of April 2014 also reflects a similar vision on the part of our Palestinian brothers who agreed for the unity. I would like to congratulate each and every Palestinian who, after so many painful and lost years, displayed a brave attitude despite huge international political and financial pressures. This presents a huge opportunity for the Palestinians to advance their case with all possible international legal and political instruments to resist the consequences of occupation. It was my dream to see the unity of our Palestinian brothers when I was serving as ambassador in Palestine. Furthermore, it was also the simplest request of our Prime Minister, who mentioned in one of the press conferences he held together with President Abbas a few years ago with the words, and I quote, "The happiest day of my life would be the day that I will see the unity of Palestinians," unquote. I have no doubt that our Palestinian brothers and sisters will honor their commitment to each other in line with the calendar they agreed and make us all happy. I sincerely believe that Palestinian unity, complemented with democratic elections, and based on a state that is endorsed by the 3/4 of the international community 18 months ago, will bring freedom. Excellencies, friends, I know that I am last contributor of a long working day, so I have to stop here. I would like to welcome all of you once again to Ankara and wish you a pleasant stay here. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank to the interpreters who spared their whole day for us and will do so tomorrow. Thank you all again.
I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Turnlar for his comprehensive presentation. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our appreciation for your participation at this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to start our discussion. Participants are welcome to ask questions or make comments on the presentations they have heard. We shall take a few questions from the audience at a time, then our speakers will have the opportunity to respond. And we shall continue in this fashion for another round. Please identify yourself before asking your question, making your comments, and be as brief, concise as possible. Now, I will give the floor to whoever would like to have a question or comment. Okay, the lady there.
I'm Nurulwan from Palestine. My city is Gaza, and I'm here a journalism student next year, inshallah. Well, we heard many speeches about many activities happened in Jerusalem by the Israel, about the settlements or what happened about the Bab al-Maghara. But since I came here to Turkey, I had received many questions of the Turkish people. How is Palestine and is there war there? And every time I hear this question, I think like, is there war there in my country? And I say, there is more than war. There is settlement built every day. There is a restriction. There is checkpoints. There is more than war. We live daily in a human life, but it's worse than we can call it as a war. I also want to add something very quickly about Mr. Mahdi Abdel Hadi, about his speech. I think his speech was great. I don't need to add this, but I have to, because he mentioned that we only show the problem that happened in Jerusalem, but we don't look for solutions. We only plan and show the problems, but we need to make plans. Like everybody has told about special or specific problem, but actually we need to think about the plans. How would we stop that? Awareness is not enough now, and supporting and other stuff is not enough, because we have been doing this for long years, and we need now practical solutions. As many ambassadors here are here now, and we have many politicians in a great, serious, important positions, we need to hear some solutions and some active plans. We don't need to hear more about the problem that happened in Jerusalem. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other who would like? Let me just take, if there are other questions or comments. I see no more, then I'll give the floor to Mr. Abdel Hadi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there are many layers to recognize the current crisis or situation or issues in Jerusalem and Palestine. The first layer is the many contradicting narratives put on the table by different components who are shaping the politics of Jerusalem or Palestine in the making. Our main priority today to clarify the Muslim, Christian, Arab, Palestinian narrative and not to fall in the trap of the Jewish Zionist narrative as shaking or distorting the history and the facts. This is the first layer. The second, if we succeed in building public opinion awareness about the real issues, this is the first step. But the second step, while we are proceeding in educating ourselves and the others about the facts and the figures and the narrative, accurate information about the narrative, not denying the other, not ignoring the facts, but telling the truth about exactly what is happening. This kind of meeting is on that line, to maintain the question of Jerusalem on the table, to bring it back to the conscious of the world, to make people realize where we are heading and what is facing our reality. And this is basically our mission. Now, for this kind of a meeting, such an international symposium, international organization, United Nations meeting, it is our responsibility as well to tell them face to face, where is your position? You took so many resolutions, you took so many positions, you have the consensus as the General Assembly. Why cannot you raise your voice today of the bleeding of the Palestinians? Where are you on the question of Jerusalem? That's why people like us come all the way from Jerusalem to such an event, Ankara, Istanbul, South Africa, Malaysia, name it, just to tell them about their responsibilities in terms of ethics, principles, positions, interests, and needs. And here it is a call for this United Nations to be visible and presence. At the same time, we heard this morning from the OIC new General Secretary of his interest in encouraging people to come to Jerusalem. But I tell him, you come first before asking people to come. You have to be visible in Jerusalem. Why don't you open your own offices in Jerusalem? Why the Arab League is not reopening its offices in Jerusalem? Why you don't have a presence? Not a question of peace or settlement with Israelis or normalization. My question here, come and normalize your relationship with Palestinians and Palestinian land, and in particular the question of Jerusalem. If we succeed in this process, narrative, education, keeping it alive on the table, then we can build this kind of consensus. OIC should be visible in Jerusalem. Arab League should be visible in Jerusalem. United Nations flag and presence and position should be visible in Jerusalem and not prisoners to the Israeli de facto rule and control. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Yes, Ambassador of Namibia.
Thank you, sir. And well, let me also stand up like my sister behind me here did. And since I'm short, I may not be seen if I just remain seated. I'm a member of the Committee on Palestine. What you have said just now, sir, is so true. Sometimes when you sit in the committee and you sit in the meetings at the UN and you hear statements, some of us that have gone exactly through the same agony under apartheid systems know what it means. But there are those that only hear. And you know, as our children nowadays, when you tell them about the suffering that we have endured those days, they question you. Is it possible? And for those that do not have the experience, they would have the same questions. I would have seen and appreciate a situation. We get reports from the rapporteur generals, from the UN special representatives, the UN envoys, the ambassador here, your ambassador Mansour, deliver statements at the UN in many, many meetings about the situation in Palestine. I would have loved to see a situation where some of these main meetings, you would have sent a delegation that would be on the UN premises, demonstrating for that cause, standing behind the presentation of that report, organizing meetings together with us or through us to visit the capitals of those countries that we would want to target in order to appeal to their humanity and humanitarian feelings, if they ever had that. Because you see them supporting Israel under all kinds of circumstances. But yet, if these type of things would happen to their own people, they wouldn't have loved to. They have put some of our countries under sanctions because they are seen to violate human rights. There is no country on this earth that would most probably be compared to Israel when it comes to violation of human rights. But yet they support Israel under all circumstances. Now, I am sometimes just wondering as to, aren't we doing enough to make them to understand that these human rights violations, keeping people under bondage, encroaching upon the little piece of land that the Palestinian people have, chasing them all over the place, denying the poor children education for the future? I'm just having these questions to myself, but what I want to say is, let's try and do more, especially when some of the speakers today have indicated that we need to see more action in this plea for the better for the Palestinian people, especially during this year, the International Year of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. We cannot show more solidarity if we don't show action to it, especially engaging those big powers, so-called powers, that support Israel in this cause. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If no, Dr. Abdelhadi wants to reply.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. I think there are two roads for this. The first one, either we promote this idea of exposing Israeli atrocities and dehumanization of the Palestinian and violation of human rights, and build up on it in exposing Israeli to public opinion by boycotting Israelis and building the consensus among the world. It's time to boycott Israeli policies and practices, institutions, universities, goods and relationship, and just expose them and isolate them in the face of the world and not expecting the other to do it. We have to do it ourselves. This is one road. But the other serious road, which you can do easily and simply, you have 138 countries did recognize the state of Israel as a member of the United Nations. Can you translate this recognition to reality on the ground? I showed you this afternoon, the cantons, 3-4 cantons in Palestine. If you have twin relationship with universities, with municipalities, with chamber of commerce, with academics work, with civil societies, just build a human, visible relationship with the Palestinians, visible presence on Palestinian territory. Translate your recognition of Palestine to reality, in spite of the occupation, in spite of the stamp on the borders, whether it's Alembi Bridge or Lidda Airport. These are the two roads we can take. The first road is already taken by the youth of Palestine. I'm telling you openly, sincerely, for the first time, it's not an intifada, it's not an armed resolution or fighting. It's the youth. 60% of our society are standing up for their dignity as the youth in the Arab world and saying, we have to boycott Israel on all levels. This is a movement in the making, how we can support this position. And the second one, I emphasize again and again, those countries who did recognize Palestine and those countries who are in the process to recognize Palestine, land and people and right and aspiration for self-determination and human dignity, translate your recognition to facts on the ground with the Palestinians. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions or comments. You would like to respond, comment? Yes, Mr. Fadi.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank you all for the great and helpful presentations. But I have a brief comment here. I heard that everybody is agreeing on visiting Jerusalem and paying a visit for its importance for the real meaning of the cause and the question of Jerusalem. For that, I think I thought of an idea why such a meeting cannot be convened next year in Jerusalem by the organization of the OIC, the Turkish government, the UN, and all relevant parties that would like to embody this challenge and this important meeting for the city of Jerusalem. Thank you.
I think this plenary has focused on a traumatic view of Jerusalem and the serious, drastic, very bad situation. I know that all of our presentations were very, very sad, and this is the truth on the ground. The situation is there is no escape except to describe the current situation in Jerusalem this way. But I want to stress here, it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't good efforts being practiced on the ground in Jerusalem by different parties. And there is a way to, maybe in the coming 2 days or tomorrow, to mention some of these efforts in order to seek which routes should be supported. And I see there are many people coming here from Jerusalem, and they can make some comments on some organizations which deserve the support of the United Nations. But maybe we are focusing on the very sad situation because of our ambition that this is a United Nations meeting, and the ambition is bigger than talking about the specific small proposals of finding solutions for 2-3 families here, one street here, renovation case here, one project of restoration at the mosque here. But there are good efforts by the Palestinian Jerusalemites. They really are doing a great steadfastness on the ground, and they deserve the support. And again, we need to find and suggest certain solutions because we are talking about either removal of occupation or waiting maybe other 20-50 years until the occupation is removed. And we cannot live this way. But my ambition from the United Nations, as I live the life of Jerusalem people on a daily basis, is to see pressure tools mainly on the Security Council. It's not our job coming from Jordan or from Jerusalem or whatever. It's the job of the state members of states of the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comments from other experts, if you like to have any? Share. Thank you. This concludes the deliberations of Plenary 1. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our deep appreciation to the distinguished speakers who expressed thought-provoking ideas and deep analysis. Many thanks also to those who contributed to the question and answer session. Thank you all for your interest and attention. I just want to affirm that the organizers, and in particular the OIC, will definitely, this is after 10 years, such an occasion, coordination between UN and OIC and Turkey is taking place. We hope this will be repeated many times, and the purpose is to support Jerusalem and the steadfastness of the Palestinian people in Jerusalem, and we assure them that we are taking all the sufferings and all the violations we have here today into our account. That will give us determination to do more. We have been doing, but we know this is not enough in financing or in other areas. We know the needs is huge in Jerusalem. We shall do our best, and we shall, you will notice our presence, inshallah, in Jerusalem. And we promise you will have more visits from OIC, from you, and from everybody who is able to go to Jerusalem. We shall do our best to be with you all the time. Before adjourning this session, I would like to invite all participants to a reception hosted by the government of the Republic of Turkey tonight at 6:30 outside this conference room. The meeting will resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I would like to appeal to all the distinguished participants to make an effort to be here on time. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Yes. Sure.